The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. Memorial Day is the time the nation sets aside to remember its war dead. There are parades and commemorations and even barbecues. But at the 50th anniversary of the beginning and the 40th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War, there's been a renewed push to acknowledge and appreciate the service of the veterans of that war. Tonight's guests will be able to explain why, and I think you'll find that explanation compelling. Now, because of the holiday, we will not be able to take phone calls, but you can email questions or comments to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of our program. And I hope one of the things that you will email me is please thank the veterans for their service, because in part, that's what tonight's show is about. Here in our studio tonight is the Executive Director of the United War Veterans Council, who are producers of the annual New York City Veterans Day Parade, and also a Vietnam veteran. It's Patrick Gualtieri. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And a Tet Offensive Vietnam vet who's very proud of his service, I know, and is part of a large community of Bronx veterans. It is Johnny H. Williams, Jr. Good evening. Mr. Williams, we appreciate your service as well.
Thank you very much, sir.
What I want to do, gentlemen, and I should mention also on the telephone, we're joined by a retired Lieutenant Army Nurse Marsha Four, who I believe is in Pennsylvania. Ms. Four, good evening. How are you? Do we have her? Well, we'll get her on the phone in just a little bit. In any case, gentlemen, before and Ms. Nurse, before we start, Ms. Four, I'm sorry, we're going to show a little video. I know, Patrick, that you brought. I emceed the Bronx Veterans Breakfast, which you both were attending. And when I saw the video, that made me say, you know what, we got to do this on BronxTalk on Memorial Day.
Wonderful.
So we're going to show the video, we'll set the tone, and then we'll visit with these very wonderful people. Let's take a look.
Can I help you?
Just a cup of coffee, please.
Coming right up. Oh, there's no charge.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Thanks again.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your support.
Picture taken with the soldier. Can I take a picture?
Sure.
All right, smile. There you go.
Sir, my son would like to ask you a question.
Are you a hero too? That man said you were.
I just served as best I could.
Can we take a picture?
Sure.
Smile big. You say.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your support.
Can I get you a refill?
Find more at moments.org.
Well, I think that pretty much sets the tone. It's almost like that's our show tonight. That's all you needed to see. Patrick, tell me a little bit about fighting in Vietnam and giving of yourself, putting yourself in obvious danger, as well as losing, I'm sure, some of your comrades.
Correct.
And what was it like to come home to America after that war?
It was bizarre, at best. I remember coming home. We left from Vietnam, and we ended up in Anchorage, Alaska. And when I got off the plane, we didn't go right to the plane, the turnstile. We went right onto the ground, the tarmac, and walked, right? And we heard all this noise, and we're going, wow, it's people welcoming us home.
As in every other war in the history of America.
Well, there were people, they were just screaming at us, and profanities and everything else.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We were shocked. So we ended up now in the airport, right? And bless the USO girls, they were there, you know, giving us coffee and welcoming us. And we were so quiet, Gary, quiet.
And so you were actually surprised. In other words, you had just figured, look, I know that it wasn't the most popular war in the world, but we came home and at least we did what we were asked
Absolutely.
to do.
Well, back then, no cell phones, no internet. You don't hear it. You don't hear any...
But the news didn't travel the other way. We all got the news from the war.
That's all it was.
Has there been recognition to this point?
Oh, huge.
Or there has been?
Oh, yeah.
So you feel like we've kind of turned the tide?
Oh, no. I feel like we're in the midst of turning the tide.
Okay.
The Vietnam veterans, we had to make our own veterans group. And the truth of the matter is we came up with a motto: never again will one generation of veterans abandon another. So we will never abandon. So consequently, those with the new young men and women that are serving, we vowed they will never go through what we went through.
Johnny, let's talk to you about your experiences. You share what Patrick said? I mean, did that kind of thing happen to you as well?
Yes, it happened to apparently every veteran that came home.
Yeah.
If I could say one thing that really helped me was when we had the parade in the Bronx across the Brooklyn Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, the first time, left my house by myself and said to myself, I'm going down there. For the first time from the war, there were so many veterans that I didn't even know.
Yeah.
From that day, my entire life changed.
And how long ago was that?
83.
Oh, 83, 84.
In 1983.
But there's a lot of time between, that's 10 years between
yeah.
the time you came home and that particular time. I'm going to say it right out, and I know many people my age or our age who are aware of it. We protested the war very heavily. And I suppose because of the nature of communications, we got the pictures from Vietnam.
Yeah.
We were horrified about what America had been doing, and we felt we shouldn't have been there. And I guess there was a lack of understanding, a lack of respect. I'm going to ask Marcia this question. I believe that, unfortunately, it took something as terrible as 9/11 to make people realize what it's like to be in danger, and then to begin to really appreciate the men and women who are on our front lines, meaning police and firefighters here at home, and then, of course, then the people that we send abroad. Marcia, do you think 9/11 was, in a way, a turning point in this feeling and attitude toward all veterans, if not specifically Vietnam vets?
Well, I think one thing that it did for the country was they were now feeling a personal effect to tragedy at home, to possible harm to them personally here in our
Right.
homeland. That's not something that they really hadn't experienced in the past.
So then they associated and could relate on some level with some of the danger that you folks had been in, while of course they didn't fight in the jungles in Vietnam, but they had a better understanding of it.
they had a sense of the fear that it did present a great sense of fear for them, of course. And I think that it brought home, I think, to them too, the sacrifices that are made by the men and women who have served in the military, and it also demonstrated how we all, the citizens at large and the military and the firefighters and the police, all came together. For that common cause.
9/11 brought that kind of unity that I don't think we'd had. Marcia, after you, and I'm going to make the assumption that you were received in the same way these gentlemen were, after that happened...
Well, I have to say this, not necessarily.
No?
See,
Okay.
Because I didn't if I didn't tell someone that I had been in the military, they never would have known, because I didn't have a military haircut. And at those times and in those days, if you had short hair, it was a dead giveaway.
Well, these guys got a little old. I won't ask them to take off their hats to see what their hair looks like now. And I mean that only with love in my heart, fellas. You know that. But Marcia, so the question I was getting to, did you regret your service once the analysis of the war came out and it seemed to be a big mistake for America, and then that maybe you didn't feel it the way these guys did, but maybe gee whiz, why did I do that? Did you ever regret your service?
I never regretted it for a minute.
Yeah. I knew she was going to say that.
Our mission as healthcare professionals, as nurses, as doctors, our mission was much different than those of the guys that were out in the field and actually in the midst of the fighting. We were there to help heal and get them home. So it was a little different for us. It was a very traumatic in that I think it was a great awakening when we discovered exactly what war was. I mean, we were all very, very young.
Right, and you were nurses
children,
now, but you were in a way in no less danger, because being out there and being in those jungles, certainly you were on as much the front lines. I think, and again, I'm an American who learned from TV. I think we learned that from MASH, and we watched the MASH TV show all those years, and we saw that they were covering the bodies with in their operations with their bodies. Gentlemen, let's talk a little bit more about that, and I'll ask you the same question. Did you regret your service at any point?
No whatsoever. I feel there's no noble wars. There's noble warriors. So that differentiates it. It's kind of like what I did. I had my integrity in. I felt I served, and believe me, if I was young enough, I would be doing it again.
Did you evaluate the war the way many of us who are still home looked at the war and said, gee, maybe we ought not to be there? Or you were into being a soldier and doing your duty and serving your country regardless of what the politics at home had said?
Not necessarily. It was more analytically. I looked at it and I said, that's communism invading the south of South Vietnam, and God knows it could go anywhere.
Right.
So I was over there honestly protecting our country.
Johnny, when Nixon expanded the war, I know we're doing American history here tonight, but when Nixon expanded the war into Cambodia, did you say, oh no, big mistake? Or did you, again, much like the others, not really analyze what was out there and just do your job?
No, we just did our job for the simple fact that we are veterans, father, family, we came to a veteran type of family, and we were taught to get up and to move out. And as an American, our main thing is to protect this country at any risk. And it's not up to us to make the judgments. It's up to us to protect the people of this country and other countries that we have to. That's why we're veterans.
Yeah.
Stark contrast to today. I mean, basically nowadays, and I just related to you, I was in the airport yesterday. I saw some service men and women, and I went right up to them and thanked them, just walking by. And they looked at me in earnest and really seemed to appreciate it. Frustrating, I guess, that you didn't get received in that same way in the airport. And frankly, if I was a youngster or had been in an airport then, I wonder if I would have looked at, or how I would have viewed servicemen and women.
Well, to me, that's, I think, why I even do the Veterans Day Parade, to make sure that people that are veterans get acknowledged. So by doing that, and it should never not happen, the Veterans Day Parade. And that could be scary if all of a
Well,
sudden...
why
it
would
doesn't.
that seems inconceivable? I mean, are you always concerned that somebody would take it away?
Well-
Is it your natural fear from having gone through what you went through?
No, it's veterans producing the Veterans Day
Right.
Parade.
Right.
Get it? It should, like, we're producing our own parade. So there should be, we have a terrific corps of volunteers. They're wonderful.
Right.
But we make sure the integrity is there. We really do.
Marcia, do you find, I mean, I'm talking to Bronx people and I know what their nature is. Do you find that veterans are happy or unhappy about remembering what they'd been through? In other words, maybe Vietnam vets in some ways would reflect the way the rest of some of the country is and say, you know what, I'd rather not even talk about it at this point.
Well, I think there's very mixed feelings. I mean, I think everybody that served has some mixed feelings about that because we all lost some of our friends. You know, we went through that pain too, but we also made some lifelong friends. And so there's very mixed feelings about it. It's difficult to go to the wall. I go to the wall 2 or 3 times a year. I have friends there, but all of that service that we had together and all of the trials that we went through and all of the heartache and all of the, away from home and all the pain, that has, in fact, really melted us together. And, I mean, I know you hear about that all the time, the camaraderie and all, between military folks. But we've all gone through the same.
I have to tell you, when I was at that
we have this bond.
Marcia, I was saying when I was
share that
at
bond is a very, it's a very heartening experience. It's something that can't be replaced.
When I was at that breakfast the other day, it was an overwhelming thing. I almost felt like I wished I was part of it, and I wish I could understand it. And Johnny, I know you feel very strongly about the brotherhood or sisterhood. We're certainly not going to distinguish.
It's this special society. It's this special...
Johnny, so you feel very strongly about it, but something that Patrick passed along to me before the show tonight, which I'm shocked about, is that no other veterans organizations would allow Vietnam vets to join, like the American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, etc. Is this
At that time.
At that time.
At that time. That's why Vietnam Veterans of America came to be. That was the whole reason, right? And at that time, no one understood it as a war. So people back home were treating it as a conflict. Remember, it was the Vietnam conflict. It was a hell of
a conflict.
Yeah, 58,000 dead, and it's a conflict.
I hate to say, if they saw what you had seen, you wouldn't call it a conflict.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Johnny, what does Memorial Day mean to you? I mean, let me ask it this way: do you because he brought up the Veterans Day Parade? Do you distinguish between Veterans Day and Memorial Day, or do you say, well, you know what, this is just a day to honor people for their service, dead or alive?
No, we have to actually go out on the Memorial Day. We go to the wall every year with the Bronx Vet Center, and we take the pictures of, for the veterans who can't make it to the trip and stuff like that. We have our website that we put all the different pictures on and stuff like that. But the main thing is that Memorial Day comes from the heart. It's felt by every veteran, no matter what age. And I was told that it's not other people's fault for the simple fact that they don't know what we went through. And it took me a lot of years to come to that point because it was my mother who sort of changed me, not me that sort of changed. Her son was completely different. Like the ladies and the men who come home, they don't come home the same way that they left. It's no way you can go to a battlefield and come home the same way.
Certainly that Vietnam battlefield, as it was communicated to us here in the States and as pictures and movies and documentaries have shown, that was a particularly difficult war because of the nature of it. I mean, again, not minimizing at all anybody who fights in Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere else where you can, we do the pinpoint bombs and the laser technology, but you guys were doing hand-to-hand combat in the jungles. This is, we're recording this beforehand, but it is airing on Memorial Day, and it occurred to me that maybe there were some that you wanted to remember today?
Oh, absolutely.
Anybody's name you want to mention?
Vincent Serrano.
Comes right out.
Right
I'm
out.
sure it's
right from the Bronx, actually.
There you go.
And he was great blonde-headed Italian, with the biggest smile you ever saw, And when they pass on, to tell you the truth, it's unreal. It's just unreal because you're 20 and you live forever at 20. Yeah.
Johnny, somebody you want to mention?
All the ones that I really want to remember, I just look at their names on the wall and I keep them to myself. I'd rather have them there.
Marsha, let's talk to you. Same kind of question. Are there people that you healed that maybe you're in touch with, or others that you want to remember? Because you were involved not only in supporting the war, but in really healing people who had been hurt.
Well, the hospital I was at, our troops didn't stay with us very long. Our mission was just to get them in and get them out as quick as possible. And so we really didn't have time to learn who they were. We did have a very close unit, and there was dust-off helicopters attached to us. We lost a number of our dust-off helicopter pilots and crews that were close to us. But it was, those were the difficult times. Most of the patients that we had, we didn't know. But the ones that we did know were the hardest for us to have to
I was just thinking,
deal with.
As you mentioned that, I was just thinking that maybe in a strange way you were better off having them be somewhat anonymous, because if you got close to them while you were trying to heal them, it might have been even more difficult.
Most of the work we had to do had to be done very quickly, especially when they came in off the choppers into the emergency room. And we had very few nurses, and so when we were off duty, we were covering the emergency room. And at that point in time, everything came very fast, and it slowed you down if you paid too much attention to who they were and kind of got into that piece. You had to just look at it as a job you had to do and as quickly as possible.
I'm tempted to ask you this question. This is such a modern American question, but I'm really curious, and I wonder if our viewers would think the same thing. How accurate was the MASH TV show? Was it like I realize the fun and games and all that other stuff. It wasn't a sitcom, but were some of the war scenes accurate for you working in the medical units?
Well, that was a different war, of course. You have to remember that was Korea, not Vietnam. But there was a thin line of some very unique experiences that kind of transposed themselves over to our experiences. And I think even some of the joking around, that wasn't uncommon, because oftentimes that's the way you deal with the most tragic of situations. In order to balance sort of, those internal emotions that you have, in order to keep yourself balanced, oftentimes that is how you react to that when you're off duty.
So even though there is an element of Hollywood in it, obviously, but you're saying the dynamic between the people and almost like the summer camp approach to, gee whiz, let's have talent night or whatever it is. That was realistic.
It wasn't quite a summer camp, but you find that even in emergency rooms here in hospitals here in the States. You have to keep yourself in a balanced position in order to protect your own mental health.
Interesting.
Because if you can't perform and do your duties in the best possible and quickest fashion, then somebody's going to suffer.
Yeah.
And so you have to put some of your emotions aside.
Right. Patrick, some of the same kind of question for you. Is there some positive memory? I realize the camaraderie is something you have to this moment, even with the guy sitting next to you. But are there positive memories, something about just being with the guys or doing whatever it was that you did, something that you bring up?
Without a doubt.
Really?
They got your back.
Yeah.
Really, I know Johnny's got my back. I don't know Johnny, but Johnny's got
met
my
him
back.
Tonight.
We've been knowing each other a long time.
But back and forth, there is that analogy, is that I got your back. And that is amazing. It's not like, let me figure him out. Will he be there for me? No.
You just know.
You just know it.
Did you or do you search for that in your after Vietnam War life?
Absolutely.
In other words, you still look around for people who have that sense of
That's the bar.
That's the bar. Johnny, I saw you smile when I asked him that question about positive memories or things like that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things about I mean, every war, no matter what war it is, but being that we speak on the Vietnam War, our brothers and sisters, we were a close-knit family. Till this day, you can't separate us. Everyone had a nickname. You would never call him by his regular name.
Right.
I was the Bronx, the other guy was South Carolina.
I was Guitar.
And my
And
middle...
Marsha, does Marsha have a nickname?
Oh, I'm not going to tell you that.
Fair enough, fair enough. But I guess what starts in the war stays in the war.
And we was a close family. Mine was thin man. I weighed about 120 pounds. And, you know, it's just the way that we were. You could not separate us. And you did not look behind you to see who was there. You didn't do that in the battlefield. You already knew.
Let's talk about the advocacy. I mean, you have the pamphlets, and I know you.
Yeah.
So Patrick, you really have been a leader in a lot of this, and certainly with the parade. Talk to me about what you would like people to walk away from this TV show with. What would you like them to understand?
Come Memorial Day.
Well, this is going to air Memorial Day.
I got it.
So okay.
On Memorial Day, grab a flower. Sit down with the definition of Memorial Day and tell a kid. Just tell them what Memorial Day is. And if better than that, maybe even go to a cemetery if they could. And just honor those people that made the ultimate sacrifice. Because bottom line, freedom is not free.
Give me a definition for Memorial Day that people can use.
To
I mean, I
remember.
know what it is.
Memory.
Memory of?
Those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
Johnny, for you, what do you want people to know after this conversation?
I want them to remember me when I was a little boy on Morris Avenue where the eagle was and the World War II veterans, the Korean veterans, to point the gun and have the parades and stuff. We're still doing parades today. You got to remember that families come together 24 hours a day. And sometimes families be separated, but when they come back, you have to really look at that young man and young woman and feel their love.
Marsha, they're telling me to wrap it up, so I want to thank you for your service. That is, I was surprised Patrick didn't say it, but I'm going to say it. One of the other things that you want is, especially for Vietnam vets, walk up to one and say thank you for your service. So I'm going to start that right now.
And welcome home.
And welcome
Thank you very
home.
much.
Marsha, welcome home,
been a
and thank you
pleasure.
for your service, and thanks for being on Bronx Talk tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
Patrick Gualtieri, thank you
Thank
for
you.
being on Bronx Talk tonight, and of course, thank you for your service. And
Pleasure.
welcome home. Welcome home to the
Thank you.
BX.
Thank
And
you.
Johnny, you know how I feel. Welcome home to you too.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much.
Jane, I know there are a couple of things we want to put the Paraline Veterans Association up there,
Sure.
and services for veterans. We want to make sure that they know all about that kind of stuff, and we'll tell our friends and neighbors that if you have further comments or questions, even if it's just to say thank you and welcome home, I'll make sure that they get
That's
it.
fantastic.
Please email it to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com, or make a comment on our Facebook page. We'll read it on the air during a future edition of our program. Archives of Bronx Talk are available at bronxnet.org. You click on Bronx Talk on the right-hand navigation bar. Also, please become a fan of Bronx Talk on Facebook. I'm going to ask these guys to do the same. And we're here every Monday night at 9 o'clock. Thanks to our producer, Jane Folloro. Director is Shirley Arrieta. Studio coordinator is Dina. And to you, we'll see you next week. Good night. And once again, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. And welcome home.